Hello, and welcome to Thanks Again Film, Episode 3. The story is Dune. Yeah, I thought I'd go over Dune. There's a new movie out. I don't think they're done with it. They also made a Benny Gesserit TV show. I started watching it. Then there's the David Lynch one from the 80s. That's always really good. Plus there's the novels, which are I don't know how you would say it. They're smart. It's really brilliant writing. It's what really stands out when you read Frank Herbert's Dune are the chapter headings. When you check out those chapter headings, the man went out to the desert and sat in a hotel or in the sand, and he wanted to learn the place and understand what the desert was like. I get the impression like priests go on adventures to learn how to become a priest, and it helps them understand and deal with people. Frank Herbert sat in the desert, and I honestly believe that he envisioned himself going to Dune, not the Middle East. I remember when Mobius died, there was some really good fan art of someone sitting at a cafe. A bunch of people were sitting at a cafe, and Jean Girard goes walking by them, and he's dressed as Arzak. He's a desert character with the tall hat and the flaps on the side and the cape. Everyone's in their regular street clothes, ties and dresses, ties, pants, shirt. And he's dressed for desert war, walking by. He was in his own world. I think that's what happened to Frank. I've read the books, not all of them. I've read the first 3, and I don't remember what happens after that. You hear things over the years. They have children. Paul disappears, I'll say that. And it's another power struggle on Dune. I think I'm gonna take a different approach with this one, or from now on. I'm still testing. I'm starting out with podcasting. I'm gonna figure out what's annoying and not do it. Um, but nobody wants to sit and listen to someone read Wikipedia either, unless when I do it, I make commentary along the way. Then that's a little different. But I'm gonna try and fly through this because it has details, and details will help you get to what you're trying to explain. But I know Dune. I know the first and second movie. I've heard people talk about Dune. I'm not getting into Children of Dune. With the beginning of that surprised me though, because in Children of Dune, it's a leg sweep. They completely start over. In Dune, it's this giant battle to get from A to B, and then they shuffle the cards. That's part of what makes the story exciting. So in Dune, there's two houses, and from an outsider's perspective, it's a bright house and a dark one. And I hate to say bright because it's the Atreides, isn't it? House Atreides isn't. It's not dark, but when you look at it, they went cool. They are practiced at war. But when you compare them to the Harkonnens, I'm going to say they're the bright house. So you have the bright house and the dark house. And in between, there's Dune. And on Dune, there are I forgot the name already. Stilgar is a Fremen. I didn't have to look it up. There are the Fremen. Those are the people of Dune. And the people of Dune supply the spice melange, which is a resource that powers the entire galaxy. Or there's an emperor also who runs everything in the galaxy. I'm going to say galaxy. It's like oil. It's like oil in the desert. So there's a bright house and a dark house, and there's a resource on a planet, and neither one of them have any business being there. There are people on Dune who live there, the Fremen, and they manage the resource of spice on Dune. But the Fremen are a local people, They have old ways and they live in the desert. And these two giant houses are from outer space. So what happens is, spoilers by the way, I put spoiler tags. The Emperor tells House Harkonnen to get spice on Dune. So now this dark house is overseeing Dune, and they're being dark about it. So the Emperor says, okay, no more of that. Now the Bright House, you go do it. And the Bright House goes to do it, and the Dark House says, no, we're not moving. We own this. So, as a compromise, they decide, okay, well, why don't we make an alliance and then we can get the work done? And the alliance is a marriage, just like any fairy tale. The Bright House shows up and they offer something really bright, and they offer a fairy tale where the two houses join and become one and live happily ever after. But someone in the Bright House wants something. Duke Leto, Atreides, is a traditionalist. He's the head of that house, and he says he wants his firstborn son to be a son. So instead of the bright daughter to show up and marry the dark house and everyone lives happily ever after, they get Paul Atreides. Now, that causes problems. So the Dark House says, we don't like the way you do business. We don't want that. And they destroy. They didn't get what they wanted. And they destroy the Bright House. Atreides. But little did they know that Paul is trained by a lot of skilled people. They are from outer space, and they serve the Emperor. We're talking about Duncan, Idaho. We're talking about Duke Leto, Lady Jessica, a Bene Gesserit witch. Who else are we talking about? We're talking about Gurney Halleck. That house is full of, are you kidding me? So, that house survives in Paul and Lady Jessica, and they retreat to the people of Dune. So after that, it's that house saying, the Bright House says, what about this house, which is the House of Dune? You can't do anything about that. And they retreat to the Fremen. And they teach the Fremen to be like House Atreides. And now it's the entire planet of Dune being bright instead of neutral, and dispelling the dark house from Dune. And they lived happily ever after. That's my understanding of what happens in the story of Dune. But I'm not sure what that means yet. That being said, Dune is complicated. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the plot. In the distant future, Duke Leto Atreides is assigned by the Padishah, Emperor Shaddam IV, to replace Baron Vladimir Harkonnen as the five holder of Arrakis, a harsh desert planet and the sole source of spice, a valuable psychotropic substance that imparts heightened vitality and awareness. Spice is also key to interstellar travel, giving spacing guild navigators the ability to guide starships to traverse space instantaneously and safely. Emperor Shaddam, fearful of Leto's rising power, plots for House Harkonnen to retake Arrakis. Alright, one more time. Emperor Shaddam, fearful of Leto's rising power, plots for House Harkonnen to retake Arrakis. Emperor Shaddam, fearful of Leto's rising power, Duke Leto Atreides, plots for House Harkonnen to retake Arrakis, secretly aided by his Sardaukar troops, and destroy House Atreides. I forgot about that. The Emperor helped sabotage. The Emperor sent those people there because apparently House Atreides was getting too big for their britches. Leto is suspicious of the Emperor, but weighs the risk against the power of controlling Arrakis and making an alliance with his mysterious natives, the Fremen. Leto's concubine, Lady Jessica, is an acolyte of the Bene Gesserit, an exclusive sisterhood whose members possess advanced physical and mental abilities. As part of a centuries-long breeding program, they instructed her to bear a daughter whose son would become a Kizak Haderach, a Bene Gesserit and messianic super being with the presence necessary to guide humanity to a better future. Jessica disobeyed and bore a son, Paul, who was trained by Leto's aides, Duncan Idaho, Gurney Halleck, the Souk Doctor, Wellington, Ewa, and the Mentat, Thurfer Hawat. I know I'm butchering that. And she teaches him Bene Gesserit disciplines. Paul confides in Jessica and Duncan about troubling visions of the future. The Reverend Mother and Imperial Truthsayer Gaius Helen Mohiam subjects Paul to a deadly Gamjabar test to assess his humanity and impulse control, which he passes. That's like the most famous part of the movie. The Gamjabar test, or she asks him to stick his hand in the box. She asks him to stick his hand in the box, and it's nothing but pain. And he can't remove it, or he fails. House Atreides arrives at Arrakeen, the principal stronghold on Arrakis. Duncan's advance party has made contact with the Fremen. The natives revere Paul and Jessica, which she explains is due to the Bene Gesserit sowing beliefs on Arrakis centuries earlier. An attempt to assassinate Paul with a hunter-seeker fails. At a secret meeting on the Harkonnen planet Getty Prime, Mohiam insists Baron Harkonnen spare Paul and Jessica in his coup, to which he duplicitously agrees. Leto meets and negotiates with Fremen chieftain Stilgar. It meets the imperial judge of the change, Dr. Liet Kynes, a planetologist who lives among the Fremen. Kynes briefs them on the dangers of spice harvesting and the giant sandworms that travel under the desert and render unwise the use of protective shields. During a flight, they rescue a stranded spice harvesting crew, I remember that, from a sandworm. And Paul's exposure to the spice triggers intense premonitions. Alright, that's half the story. There's only 2 paragraphs left. I totally forgot. So, House Atreides didn't stand a chance. Even the Emperor was against them. Oh boy. Yue betrays the Atreides and disables Arakian shields. A bunch happens. It's moment after moment of the fall of the House of Atreides. The Baron is also attacked. Though the Baron has arranged to have Paul and Jessica dropped deep in the desert to die, a compassionate Yui has left them with a Frem kit with survival supplies. So, however you feel about it, however they are, the Baron didn't actually want to attack Paul or the Lady Jessica. They were about to become family. They are highly trained. Jessica uses a Bene Gesserit technique called the Voice to overpower and kill their captors. Overnighting in the desert, Paul, surrounded by spies, has visions of a bloody holy war fought across the universe in his name. That is a tough thing. After conquering Arrakis, Baron Harkonnen appoints his nephew Rabban to oversee the planet and orders him to restart spice production to recoup the invasion's cost. Meanwhile, Duncan and Kynes find Jessica and Paul. Who discloses his plan to marry one of the Emperor. Emperor Shaddam's daughters to avert a potential civil war arising from the Emperor's betrayal. Duncan and Kynes find Jessica and Paul, who discloses the family recoups, and they disclose his plan to marry one of Emperor Shaddam's daughters to avert a potential civil war arising from the Emperor's betrayal. Okay, so they learn that the Emperor attacked someone. They learn that the Emperor attacked House Atreides. That house is that powerful. He was worried about them, and he did some sabotage to take them down. And now they're going to try and smooth things over because it didn't work with another marriage. So let me think. The Dark House paired with the emperor. So the emperor is being dark. The emperor is being dark. That's there's a chart for this. Is there's a chart for this is the problem. Is that I'm trying to think of what happens in this story, and I'm trying to mentally draw a chart at the same time. There's a really neat chart that helps with storytelling sometimes about a circle, about the insider and the outsider, and how simple it is to figure out the antagonist. Usually in stories, people people have problems. There's conflict with the foreigner. So what you do is you draw a circle, and in that circle is a little dot. And that's the world. That is the story. That is the world of the people of that story. And somewhere outside of that circle, you place another little dot. And that should spell out everything. The foreigner is that little dot outside the circle. And the people of the story have trouble with that little dot. And sometimes in storytelling, that little dot is on the fence, is on the line of the circle, and has a foot inside the circle and outside the circle. And sometimes in storytelling, that little dot is inside the circle. One of the neatest ones is Star Wars, where the bad guy is the Emperor. So the way I saw it was the Emperor is definitely, if the circle represents, the happily ever after, the community, the healed, helpful, hopeful, happy community. If the Emperor is the foreigner, you'd place him outside that circle so fast. You place him outside that circle. But what happens is, in Star Wars, the Emperor is in the center of that circle. And it's so funny. It's fun and clever. But there's all sorts of stuff that goes with that. I'm trying to put it together. The Emperor is being dark, and the Harkonnens are dark. So there's at the top, there's a circle of, there's a dot for the Emperor, and the Harkonnens are just below it off to the side, being dark. And then across from the Harkonnens is a bright circle for House Atreides. And then in the middle of this triangle is Dune. And on Dune are the Fremen. So I'm trying to put it together. The Emperor wants an alliance. Okay, it failed. That's sharp. It failed. That marriage that was supposed to heal everything failed. So the Emperor is saying, let's try one more time. And this time, instead of marrying across, marry up. He's going to offer the princess. So this wounded house, this wounded bright house is now going to pair with the emperor who oversees everything. Where does that leave the Harkonnens? Paul should not trust that. That's a tough one. But if you watch Dune, I think it's sincere. Well, they're avoiding a civil war. He wants business to continue. He stirred trouble, and he's trying to say never mind about it. Get back to work. They're discovered by Sardaukar soldiers armed with a laser gun, and Duncan sacrifices himself, enabling Paul and Jessica's escape. Deep in the desert, Paul and Jessica encounter Stilgar's Fremen tribe, including Chani, the young woman from Paul's visions. When Stilgar commands Blineance towards them, Fremen warrior Jameis challenges his authority and challenges them to a ritual duel to the death. I hated that part of the movie. Paul accepts and wins. Contrary to Jessica's wishes, Paul joins the Fremen, determined to fulfill his father's goal of bringing peace to Arrakis. And that's Dune Part 1. I hated that part of the movie because, I don't know, if you dial out of Dune a little bit, if you take a step back, people have always said that it seems like a white savior story where a white man shows up on the brown desert planet and I don't know, he steps in the power. He's put on the back foot and steps in the power and saves everyone. And I think Dune is a little more complicated than that. It shows if you want to look at that, if you want to look at it that way. But I think Dune is a little more complicated. But this scene, I didn't like it at all. Because they show up needing help. And Paul, I find it hard to believe that their best fighter, Jameis, can't handle Paul. And it's another moment of black dude dies first. As a story, I wouldn't have made that choice. And That's Dune Part 1. Part 2. Part 2. Story-wise, what happens in Dune Part 2 is Paul becomes one of the Fremen. He gets closer with Chani. Stilgar teaches him to ride a sandworm. And then they build up enough strength to attack. But I was thinking earlier, I went for a walk, and I haven't figured this out yet. There's things about Dune that are complicated. I remember what I wanted to do. Hold on one second. Okay, I ran to get this. Dune, Chapter 1. His intros throughout these books, it's such elevated writing. It's mature. It's hats off every time. It's amazing. A beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. This every sister of the Bene Gesserit knows. To begin your study of the life of Muad'Dib, then take care that you first place him in his time born in the 57th year of the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, and take the most special care that you locate Muad'Dib in his place, the planet Arrakis. Do not be deceived by the fact that he was born on Caladan and lived his first 15 years there. Arrakis, the planet known as Dune, is forever his place. From the Manual of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. Dune's amazing. But what I was earlier on the walk, I went for a walk earlier today. And somehow I got around to the idea that what if Dune is actually about beauty? And then I started thinking about the David Lynch version, and the Baron specifically is grotesque. There's a grotesque character vying for power, and then there's, what's his name? Look for Dune, not Dunkin' Donuts. If you start, look up Dune, Dunkin', Idaho. They needed a crossover. They totally should have had a crossover. That's a missed opportunity. Dune should have done something with Dunkin' Donuts. I had to type it in. Fade. That's what I'm thinking of. Fade. My memory. Fade has some different kind of imagery on him. He really does. He the way Sting played him, he had his shirt off and he's wearing tight pants. He shows up now just sleek and white. It's dark looking though. But it's a type of, well, it's contrast. But it reads as false. It's a try hard. It's not something that's actually pleasant. It's the aesthetic of, when you walk through a museum, are you going to find rock and roll? Are you? It's pleasant, but if you're looking for the aesthetic of beauty, I don't think that harshness, although it has its place, I don't think that harshness is in the same category. The same thing happens with plants. If you do an experiment, some plants, well, generally plants in general, if you play different types of music for plants, the classical music is considered pretty and nice. And those plants thrive. They do the best. And if you speak kindly to them, they grow. But if you play something, I think the harshest was heavy metal. If you play something like that, then the plants wither and die. It's the equivalent of speaking harshly to someone or something. The plants just can't survive. It's something about the aesthetic of Dune places that sort of system in place on this desert planet, of where I think House Atreides was something beautiful, or they were reaching for it. Also, there's the people of Arrakis. This is what I need to look up next. The people of people of Dune, the Fremen. The Fremens, what did they have? It was a prophecy that someone would show up. I had to look it up. Okay, on Dune, the Fremen prophecy. The Fremen prophecy in Dune refers to the ancient myth of the Lisan al Gaib, voice from the outer world, and the Mahdi, the Messiah, planted by the Bene Gesserits, Missionera, sounds like pasta, Protectiva, to manipulate the Fremen for future use, which Paul Atreides later fulfills as a means to lead them to paradise and power. Which Paul Atreides later fulfills as a means to lead them to paradise and power, transforming a tool of control into a genuine catalyst for galactic jihad. This prophecy, woven into the Fremen's Zinsuni religion, foretold an outsider who would bring water and freedom, eventually becoming the Kwisatz Haderach for Paul, a concept he leverages for his meteoric rise against the Empire. So they have a prophecy saying that someone from outer space or outer world or somewhere, someone from not their tribe, would show up and lead them out of this desert of not having water. Water, freedom. They'd be in control. They are in control. That's really interesting. The Fremen are the one people who have, if you're going by supply and demand, control over the entire galaxy. They know Dune the best. They ride the worms. They can collect as much spice as they want, almost. I mean, they can tear down production. They don't. I don't know. They're from Dune. They should be in charge of Dune. It's I'm trying to figure out Paul. This kind of fits. The Fremen are looking for a type of beauty. They're looking for a happiness. I was also thinking of Saul Bass. Saul Bass, he was a designer who did a lot of people's favorite stuff in the 60s with posters, designs, and film. Intro credit sequences and things. And the cover of Spartacus, for example. Charade. It's a mad, mad world. That kind of thing. And I remember in an interview he was saying the point of art, or his art, was to find aesthetic beauty. That was the point. Was to find something aesthetically pleasing. I think he's right because Rotten Tomatoes, for example, people don't go to the movies to see a bad movie. People don't want to eat bad food. They don't want to. Well, I don't know. Sometimes people want to listen to bad songs. Um, Nobody wants to live anywhere bad. I think there a big chunk of the story of Dune has to deal with the search for beauty on some level. The Harkonnens can't find it. And when they were presented with the opportunity to meet it, which is House Atreides, they failed. They threw it away. But Paul, they had an alliance, but that's not what happened, was it? It's Duke Leto happened. Duke Leto said he wanted a son. And he threw away the Bene Gesserit plan to make a daughter so that the Emperor could control all of Dune. They went with this instead, and Paul then becomes Muad'Dib, the outsider, who takes his place among the Fremen. Now, from there, what he has to do is go walk out into the desert. Paul then has to go walk out into the desert and get dry and see some visions. And basically what that sounds like, he has to go stare into the sun and see how how much he likes it. And it's an odd thing. It really is. He has to go walk out into the desert and find it beautiful, I think. Because it happens over and over again. When you win the Olympics or something, they hop on the stage and they hold up a shiny circle. The most aesthetically pleasing shape is the circle. and they make it bright and shiny. Hmm. Yeah, you see it over and over again. At the end of the Phantom Menace, he holds up a glowing orb. Sometimes at the end of a movie, there's a bright explosion. Actually, I heard a news article once that said the top 10 movies of all time all have explosions in them. So Paul wants to walk out and into the desert and have a vision and take on a better understanding of the universe. He wants to be able to see through all space and time and understand every timeline and every possible course of action and be able to take the right one. He wants to be able to look at someone and see all of their past and futures and understand every moment of their life. It's an odd kind of understanding. But in that, is it a search for beauty? Is he searching for beauty? Here's something else that's interesting. Paul, part of this story is that Paul is false. He becomes the Kizak Zadrak, but he's false. He's not a true one of the people because he's interested in getting revenge for his father. So the people of Arrakis, my brain is gone. I have to look I keep flipping back to look. The Fremen. The Fremen. Okay, I had to look that up. The Fremen accept Paul. But Paul is false. He doesn't want to truly be one of these desert people. He accepts their power so he can get back at the Harkonnens. I don't think it's the same thing. And I think the fact that he accepts all this power is part of the reason why he ends up the way he does. For people who aren't sure about I hate that there's spoilers like this because I'm actually spoiling the books. But Paul marches right back out into the desert to become the Kizak Zadrak. He's Muad'Dib, and he wants to become the Kizak Zadrak, and he ends up becoming one of the worms, which is not something that's aesthetically pleasing or beautiful. is almost like a type of punishment for it might be a type of betrayal. So that's really interesting. If the story of Dune, the Fremen might be the main character. Or maybe Dune. Is the planet itself looking to find someone someone who wants to explore what beauty is, which is health, and bring happiness and wealth back to Dune? I haven't read past. Is that what happens to Dune? Does it turn it back into like a lush garden? That's what happened to Transformers. Transformers it had a good guy and a bad guy storyline, and they fought out in space, and the good guy knocked the bad guy into the spirit realm where he couldn't do all the crazy things that he was doing to win the fight. And once the bad guy realized his mistake by following the good guy into the spirit realm, they marched right back to the normal space, but they didn't have any of their bodies. They were ghosts floating around. So he got the upper hand. So in order to keep fighting, they called space rocks to them and started to inhabit the stones, and that's how the Transformers got their bodies. Because they were spirits that called metal to them, and they inhabited the metal. And the good guy and the bad guy were able to keep fighting, and then from there, they found a planet, and they kept fighting, and they kept calling on metal, and they built other Transformers till it became the Autobots versus the Decepticon war. And that story ends. It's pretty interesting. They have to make the jump to Earth to understand what life is. They have to, the metal people, the harsh metal people, have to go take their fight to Earth and understand what a lush green environment is. And they land in the desert. And then they build a space bridge to skip all that travel and jump right back home. And they take that info of what the lush green environment is, and they make metal plants. And they pretend to be beasts and monsters. You get gorilla transformer, a gorilla made out of metal, and a cheetah made out of metal, and a dragon made out of metal. Dinosaurs made out of metal. And bibbity bobbity boo happens. And the metal starts becoming real again, and Transformers get back to where they started, where they end the war, and they're happily ever after. They're people again. But that's Transformers. Um, what are the people of Dune looking for? They're looking for, I think, a wellness, which is a beauty. By the end of the story, uh, well, no, not by the end of the story. By the end of the first Dune Part 1, I think Denis Villeneuve clued in on it. When Paul goes to fight, when Paul tries to join the group, when he tries to join the desert people, a fighter steps forward and says no. And the whole time, Paul is distracted. Because Chani is standing nearby. His focus is on a type of beauty. He's walking out in the desert and he's having visions. And that a happy marriage is basically where that story ends in, well, the David Lynch version. The couple stands and they have a wedding and all of Dune applauds. I don't know. It's something to think about. I'm gonna have to there may or I haven't figured it out yet. There's gonna have to be a part 2 to this. What is the meaning of Dune? What are they trying to say? It's a clear story between light and dark. The light, the dark circle attacks the light circle, and the light circle falls and regroups on the neutral one and brightens it up enough to attack the dark circle. And Dune is whole, big, bright circle by the end of the story. What does that mean? Sabotage plays a role. I don't know. I'm gonna have to sit and think. These things take a while. I could be thinking about this for weeks. I might need to stick to stuff that I've thought about already. Okay, I hope someone enjoys this. It's new. It's new for me. But okay. Thanks for spending time with me. That's Dune. Be well. Be well.